Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are putting on our detective hats and diving straight into the nitty-gritty of ISO 14001:2026, specifically Clause 3.1. We're going to uncover exactly why a single, seemingly minor, misunderstood word in your paperwork can actually lead to a massive environmental nonconformance. You see, when an auditor walks into your facility, they aren't just poking around your recycling bins or checking exhaust valves, they are heavily scrutinizing the foundational language that your entire environmental management system is built upon.
Now, this quote hits the nail on the head. The crucial point here is that ISO terminology isn't just basic grammar or linguistic fluff. It actually forms the absolute structural laws of an audit. These definitions set the strict boundaries of corporate accountability. Misinterpreting core terms like organization or scope isn't just a simple typo, it's a systemic failure. It can literally invalidate your entire compliance strategy and leave your company totally exposed to some pretty significant risks.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. 1. The power of precise terminology. 2. Defining top management. 3. Who counts as a worker. 4. Identifying interested parties. 5. Organization and scope. And 6. Auditing terminology.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the power of precise terminology, the laws of the audit. So there is this massive contrast out there in how people view these definitions. A lot of folks treat them like a dry, boring glossary, something you just skip past to get to the real action of the standard. But in reality, it's the ultimate audit logic. Clause 3.1 forms a strict network of conceptual dependencies. The exact language you use dictates how responsibilities are assigned, how decisions get made, and ultimately how your environmental performance is evaluated by a lead auditor. You absolutely cannot skip it.
Moving right along to Section 2, defining top management, who holds the power.
The standard defines top management not just as some figurehead or a fancy title on a door, but as the active force providing strategic direction and allocating essential resources. And this isn't always just the CEO sitting in isolation. Depending on how you're structured, it might be an executive board, managing directors, or a group of partners. The absolute key characteristic here is having the authority to make real strategic decisions that directly influence environmental performance.
And this brings us to a very common and very dangerous terminological crime. You absolutely cannot just pass off your environmental duties to middle management, or worse, an intern, and claim compliance. A major error organizations make is treating leadership as equivalent to just day-to-day operational supervision. If top management simply dumps the work on an environmental manager without providing active oversight or without integrating these goals into the broader corporate strategy, the whole system is fundamentally flawed right out of the gate.
Because when our audit detective comes snooping around looking for proof of commitment, they are definitely not looking for lip service. They want hard evidence of collective leadership commitment. We're talking about things like approving capital budgets for cleaner technology, documented active participation in management review meetings, and solid, undeniable proof that your environmental objectives are woven directly into the strategic business plan.
All right, Section 3. Who counts as a worker? Beyond the payroll. Okay, listen up, because this definition is a massive trap for organizations. It legally extends your environmental responsibilities way beyond just your permanent employees. Under ISO 14001:2026, the concept of a worker includes temporary staff, agency personnel, interns, and crucially, your external contractors.
So think about what this looks like in practice. You've got your permanent production line staff using energy and resources, sure. But what about a maintenance contractor fixing a pipe in a chemical plant? Or a subcontractor operating a massive excavator on your construction site? If that subcontracted excavator ruptures something and causes soil or groundwater contamination, or that mechanic spills a hazardous substance, well, if they're working under your control, the auditor is looking squarely at you, not them. You own that risk.
So how do we verify these workers are actually doing what they should? Our audit detective is going to focus strictly on how well you've trained and legally bound these external folks to your policies. An auditor will explicitly ask for induction training records, contractor agreements, and competency assessments to ensure that literally anyone performing work under your control knows your environmental policies and the specific risks tied to their tasks.
Let's move to Section 4, identifying interested parties, the external gaze.
This is a surprisingly broad definition, right? It forces organizations to face a tough reality.
Your environmental responsibility doesn't just magically stop at your property line. It extends outward to anyone who even perceives that your operations might be impacting them.
To put that into perspective, a local birdwatching club carries weight as an interested party, just like a heavy-hitting government regulator does. Regulators obviously demand legal compliance and strict emission limits, but your customers, they're demanding sustainable packaging and supply chain transparency. And the local community just wants reduced noise and responsible waste disposal. If you overlook any of these groups when you're developing your environmental objectives, you are walking straight into a nonconformance.
Section 5. Organization and Scope. Drawing the boundaries. Your scope clarifies the exact physical, functional, and authority limits of your management system. And here's the kicker. It absolutely has to reflect reality. You cannot just arbitrarily draw a line to exclude a high-risk activity from your scope simply because it's a headache to manage. Doing that is pretty much a guaranteed major nonconformance.
Understanding this distinction is absolutely vital. The organization is the legal entity that bears the ultimate accountability, but the scope dictates exactly which physical locations and outsourced processes the auditor is actually going to investigate. The organization defines your governance, but the scope tells the auditor where they have the authority to look. If your scope conveniently leaves out that messy, hazardous waste storage area out back, an auditor is going to flag that immediately as a totally unjustified exclusion.
And finally, Section 6, Auditing Terminology, the detective's conclusion.
Let's recap the most common terminological crimes we see out there. We're talking about treating top management as a rubber stamp for procedural approvals, totally failing to train contractors because you don't realize they count as workers, ignoring community groups as interested parties, and making unjustified omissions in your EMS scope. When a company treats these terms as just administrative paperwork rather than actual operational realities, the entire system begins to fracture. The terminology truly is the structural framework of your compliance.
Ultimately, getting these core definitions right proves that your organization views environmental governance as a strategic reality. When top management genuinely leads, when every single worker, whether they're permanent or contracted, is competent, and when the scope accurately reflects your true environmental footprint, that is when you achieve real, measurable sustainability. So I want you to take a hard look at your own documentation today. Are you just copy-pasting the words, or are you actually living the structured meaning behind them? Think about it. If an auditor walked into your facility tomorrow morning, would your boundaries survive their definitions? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those tough questions and keep striving for true environmental maturity.